positions. A good feat, so he can get away with it sometimes, but it's not going to fly so much at the NFL level. He was appropriately drafted in the 4th round. There's been this conversation about Steele, and we loved him, we were so excited. Like, Howie Roseman couldn't focus on his day 2 press conferences because he was just thinking about Zach McPherson. He's in the 4th round. It's like, this is a Avonte Maddox, Rasul Douglas level of player. Like, he has some good traits, but he has some significant problems right now. And we should not expect him to be a high-impact player in year 1. But you look at the depth chart, and it's Avonte Maddox and Cre'Von LeBlanc all behind Darius Slay. McPherson's going to start, if not in base defense, as the other outside corner, then in the nickel as the 3rd corner. I don't see how he gets buried behind LeBlanc and Maddox on the depth chart, becomes the 4th corner. If he does, kudos to the Eagles for maybe being responsible with him, but he does need reps to develop, and it's just going to take time. I don't think he's a trustworthy player, man.
When was the last time you laughed out loud? Listen and subscribe.
From PhillyVoice.com, with me, as always, is Brandon Lee Gouton of BleedingGreenNation.com. How you doing, buddy?
Jimmy, it's Cowboys week. It's Beat Dallas week if you're Nick Sirianni, and a lot of people, but specifically if you're Nick Sirianni wearing the t-shirt that says Beat Dallas in his continued pandering. Excited, Jimmy. Big game, Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. Just did the NFC East mixtape with our good enemy, not friend, enemy, RJ Ochoa, Blocking Boys. We had some good talk there. We made a bet, so obviously really hope the Cowboys do not win, so then I don't have to live up to that bet that we made. You can listen to again on that podcast. But Jimmy, before we get into today's show, which is jam-packed, I have to tell you, BGN Radio brought to you by RacistFelon.com. Discount code BTN 15 for 15% off. Where do we start today, James?
Real quick, RJ, I saw him tweet something out about the Eagles fans talking about the Cowboys and their 25-year, going 25 years without having won a Super Bowl. And, he's reminding, of course, well, the Eagles went a lot longer with that, and there's a fan base that should know, and just to shut up about that kind of thing, it should be them. I don't know if that was exactly his sentiment, but I would counter to RJ before we get on to our own topics, that it's not just that they haven't won a Super Bowl in 25 years, it's that they're one of 3 teams in the NFC that have not been to an NFC championship game even in the last 25 years. Can you name the other 2?
Isn't it the Lions and the football team?
That is correct. And also,
great company.
Every other team in the NFC, by the way, has been to at least 2 NFC championship games during that span. So it's not just that they haven't been to a Super Bowl in 25 years, it's just that they've been... they're always relevant because they're, such a high-profile, widely followed team. But if we're just boiling it down to football only and not all of the attention and the hype that they get, kind of irrelevant over the last 25 years. So that would be my counter to, our frenemy, RJ Ochoa. So let's start with the Eagles-49ers game. Some of our big takeaways from the Eagles' loss on Sunday. Why don't you start us off, buddy?
All right, Jimmy. So I think the big story coming out of the Eagles' loss to the 49ers, at least for me, so the big picture items are the big picture people, and Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Why don't we start with the head coach, who I think it's fair to put the Eagles' loss to the 49ers on Nick Sirianni, or at least the big, if we're divvying out blame, I think the head coach certainly always, and almost any loss deserves blame, but especially in this game, it's very apparent, very obvious. A couple things I didn't like, let me tell you. First of all, I didn't like how much they were running the ball early on a 49ers defense that I thought was very gettable.
Yes.
And literally starting Josh Norman, who was like a free agent.
And a 5th-round rookie, by the way.
Yeah, and our guy DL, whatever is Amador Lenore.
Yeah.
So that should not be a matchup that is presenting the most challenge. And also that you're running again on. I feel like I think they're a little too conservative in that way.
Yeah, they have a beefy defensive line, very tough, rugged defensive line, and arguably the best linebacker in the NFL now, maybe.
Yeah, Fred Warner.
Fred Warner's awesome. He was so good in that game. Anyway, continue.
So that was frustrating to me, and then obviously we all saw the play calling at the first and goal situation from the 1 yard line where the Eagles were not able to score, and you said it in real time, Jimmy, I believe, or maybe you said it after the fact. It was like sneak the ball. I mean, that's like the most basic take. Like, it doesn't take like a football degree. Right. That said he has before to know that, but like that was so frustrating. It's like, what are we doing? Like, for me, Jimmy, how many people, like in the Eagles themselves, like players, coaches, whatever, talk about how they we have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and like, okay, then why are you sneaking the ball with a quarterback too, who is also like not weak and not like
He can squat 600 pounds.
Yeah, what are we doing here? So that was pretty frustrating too. Like, that's the game. And as I was saying to my good friend Stats on the podcast earlier this week, where I was saying I left my heart in San Francisco because the Eagles lost to the 49ers. You don't have the room for error. Like, the Chiefs can get away with that, and some of these better teams in the NFL can get away with that scoring at the 1 yard line there. The Eagles can't. They're just not that good enough to like have a big mistake like that. And obviously it was a huge swing for the 49ers to go down and have this huge drive themselves, and that was basically kind of the game right there. So that was pretty frustrating.
So like I don't like normally like micromanaging play calling, but on that 4 play sequence from first and goal from the 1, let's just run through the 4 plays very quickly. So the first play was Jalen Hurts rolled out to his right. They had 1 receiver in the pattern. It was Zach Ertz. He was covered, and that was it. It was like, and then there was no running lane for Hurts, so they threw the ball away. Okay, second down. Second down, they ran. It was a run play to Sanders to the right, but on that play, like they pulled Isaac on that. Like it wasn't just straight ahead blocking, blow him off the ball, get into the end zone. There was like they're pulling their lineman to the right, and making it more involved than I think that it needed to be. Third down, they run that weird sort of like, I don't want to call it an option, but like where Hurts has the ball in Sanders' gut, and he's kind of running along with him, like to the outside. Just throw that play out of the playbook, and then obviously the Philly special play, which with all the pandering that he's been doing with the Phillies apparel and the Allen Iverson jersey pregame and the Jalen Hurts shirt, and then even today it's continued on with the Beat Dallas shirt, as you already mentioned. It kind of felt. Do you think there was anything pandering going on there? Like, of all the plays you could run, all the trick plays you could maybe do, he runs the most famous play in Philadelphia sports history. There's got to be something to that, right?
I don't think it's like there's 0% to that. That's what I would say.
But obviously that failed horribly as well. There's again on that play, Greg Ward winds up being the quarterback in the Trey Burton role, and again only 1 receiver in the pattern, and it's Jalen Hurts. He's covered, and Ward oddly, I think he was trying to throw it to Hurts. It looked a lot like a throwaway. I think it was just a bad throw though. He might have had a fighting chance to get in. I don't think he was going to get in if he ran anyway, but he might have had a chance.
Well, yeah, make him miss a tackle or something.
Right.
Just throw out of bounds. There's no chance.
Yeah, but I thought that he had a chance to get in. But certainly the throw that he made was again, I don't think he was throwing it away. I think it was just a bad throw. And then the 49ers counter that failed 4-down sequence. And they rattle off a 12 play, or I think it was 12 anyway, 97-yard touchdown drive that included the lone 20-plus yard pass play of the season that the Eagles have allowed on a crosser by Deebo Samuel. Samuel is 40 yards, I believe. Gets them in position, they punch it in, and that's the game. Like if that sequence doesn't happen, the Eagles are very likely 2-0. The city is going, excuse my language, shit right now over like a 2-0 team headed to Dallas week 3 with a chance to really put an early stamp on this division.
So I think part of this is Nick Sirianni is a first-time play caller in the sense that he's never done it before. And maybe they would kind of say this is growing pains to some extent. I would say that Nick Sirianni, to his credit, took accountability after the loss, which I'm not trying to give him gold star for, but it's like not all coaches would do that.
I agree. Yeah.
Like Doug Peterson, I love Doug, but in the past he's kind of been like not always willing to take the L on stuff like that. But the team might be a little stubborn about it, so that's at least good to see.
He should have certainly never took the L.
Oh no, yeah, And so, I think there is something to that. Again, not everything you have to, do better next time. It doesn't matter what you say in the press conference. But, like the little sign, getting to the Jalen Hurts part of it, Jimmy, I'm curious, I guess, to see what you would grade his performance, because it's kind of a weird one, and this kind of touches on Sirianni still, but the game plan from week 1 was clearly to throw everything short. Jalen Hurts had the lowest average intended air yards in the league, and we had talked about that a lot, and kind of had said, that number is probably going to have to come up moving forward, but I didn't expect it to be literally, at the top of the entire NFL. Yeah, that seems like that, so that's kind of a criticism I have, too, of Sirianni. It seems like I said at the top of the show here, yes, they should be passing the ball, but I think in the way they did it, just felt super aggressive to go from the one strategy again to keep everything short to go, okay, now we're doing everything long. Feels like there's probably some middle ground in there that could be reached, maybe a little more balance in that regard. So that was kind of weird. And, I don't think Hurts is great, clearly. I think those big plays that he missed to Devontae Smith, I think Sirianni did admit in Thursday's press conference that Jalen Hurts wasn't so much the arm strength issue as he didn't get the ball off at the right spot. He was supposed to set up sooner to throw on that play. Those are big plays he left on the field. And maybe Devontae Smith wasn't necessarily perfect on those, but I thought he had stepped. You were in the stadium, you saw it. I thought he'd step on most of those, or at least both of those. I think there was 3 or 2. I think Devontae did his part, and the quarterback could hit him, and that was a big deal. And then, so I guess, how are you feeling about Jalen Hurts? What would you kind of grade him after that performance?
So I thought the 2 deep throws, I think it 2 really nice deep throws. The one to Quez obviously was right on the money, and then the deep throw to Reagor was also on the money. I thought Reagor did, we'll get to Reagor in a minute, but I thought he did a good job getting to the ball, fighting through the contact of the cornerback, getting the ball, but obviously he ran a terrible route because he was too close to the sideline, and, obviously that touchdown, by the way, that's probably the game too, if that touchdown counts, they're up 10-0, and really in the driver's seat in that game, but it wasn't to be. But as far as Hurts goes, yeah, I thought those 2 deep balls were really nice. I think that's actually kind of the strength of his game. He's got nice touch on those deep throws. But as you mentioned, there was a missed opportunity on the throw to Devontae Smith, and then he just didn't work the middle of the field at all. He hasn't through the first 2 weeks. I don't know if you saw.
Last season.
Yeah, true. I don't know if you saw the chart that Josh Norris put out.
I did.
Where it's got all the dots of where his throws went, and they're all outside the numbers.
And a lot of them are on the right side.
A lot of them are right
64%.
side. That's not out of the ordinary. So right-handed quarterbacks are always thrown over there, or that's the more dominant side. Left-handed quarterbacks, the more dominant side is to the left. Because that makes sense too. Cause it's sort of the way they're facing as they're kind of dropping back. But yeah, they're way more to the right than the left, and nothing in the middle. So that's got to change. They can't just ignore that area of the field, or they're going to be super easy to defend. And just to look at the chart that Josh Norris put out, I think it's worth finding if you're on Twitter. Josh Norris, I think he's got his own thing going now. He used to be with NBC, but he put that out, and it's kind of jarring, how little activity that there is in the middle of the field in his passing. So we didn't see enough of that. I get it, their linebackers are really good. It's the strength of their team, so it makes sense to avoid them in there. And then even against the Falcons, one of their lone good players on defense, Deion Jones. So I kind of get that too. In this game against the Cowboys, and again, we'll get to this in the second segment, their linebackers aren't a strength anymore, I don't think, especially with Michael Parsons moving to defensive end. So they have to work the middle of the field against them. But as far as just Jalen Hurts' overall play, Nick Sirianni did a great job week 1 of game planning to his strengths and avoiding his weaknesses. And I didn't see that same that same result in week 2. And it shouldn't be on Nick Sirianni to have a great game plan for Jalen Hurts every single week. There's going to be times where Jalen Hurts has to go out and win games for this team, and certainly when you only give up 17 points.
Yeah.
I guess.
Huh?
got it.
Thanks.
In a game, he didn't make enough play. Like we all point to the fourth play sequence, and I point to the bad play calls
says there's a phantom flower that grows
but
around here.
Kurtz has to take some of the responsibility
It
in
won't take long.
only
A flower,
putting up
huh?
11 points
All right, let's
in
take a
that
look.
game. In a game that I thought the defense did its part, and it was very winnable.
Yeah, so if you look at some of the numbers here for him, there's another throw against Dallas Goedert later on that Tim McMahon has highlighted.
How much reliance on his legs too? Sorry to cut you off. I think he wasn't. I mean, you already mentioned he was too slow to get the ball out on the deep ball to Devontae Smith. There were other times where on short downs and distances where they needed first down. I think a quick hitter was there, but just didn't pull the trigger. And then I think most of their rushing yards, especially from him, obviously, were on passing plays. So I don't think they.
Look out! What the hell is that? Hey, you want a piece of me?
Stay calm, Love. It's coming for us.
Really had their run game necessarily going in that game, and the stats look inflated. And and the rushing yards that he got, I think were at the expense of yards that they could have had through the air.
Yeah, I think the 49ers, clearly, to some extent, were okay with that, okay with him taking those, and having the opportunity to drop.
Yeah, they didn't buy him.
Yeah, and also, it seemed like he had those lanes to rush through, and he took advantage of them to his credit. That's always something that helped in that final drive. They scored the touchdown finally. He was able to gobble up yards that way, and there's value in that. I mean, a day where you finish your 15.2% completion for 0 touchdowns and an 80 pass rating, and then outside of the Buzz Watkins play, which you can't score, but outside of the play, he logged just 4.5. Not very good.
It's like his games last year.
I would agree with that. I think that's a good way to put it. Another thing that kind of frustrated me, or something we talked about here with the tight ends to be in the middle of the field, that was a question I had going into the season. How is, because it's frustrating because you have these players on your team. You have two good tight ends, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz. I don't think we've said before, we don't think the offense you run it. They be a factor. They can't be non-factors on the team. Zach Ertz making $8.5 million, or the Eagles could have cleared $8.5 million as we covered extensively on the team. It's 40 yards through 2 games. Come on, right? What are we doing here? Would like to see them be a little more involved. And obviously, it's so feast or famine with the receivers. Quez had that big play, which it was a great throw by Jalen Hurts. He got crushed on that throw where he got hit. Landon Dickerson, that was his first NFL snap, and he got blown back into Hurts. And then on the deep ball to Rager, I thought that was a great throw too, which I guess it's time to get into that to me because, man. I think that play somehow isn't getting talked about enough in terms of how big of a play that was. Like you said, that's a huge swing. You go up 10-0. The link is rocking at that point. You were there on Sunday. The crowd was fired up. That's the point where okay, the crowd is super into it. The 49ers come out for that next drive at that point, and I think they ended up punting anyway. But the crowd is going nuts. I think there's a chance for another big stop. You get the ball back again, and it just does not have that. And I can't believe
what was the result of that drive? Was that the blocked field goal?
Yes. Jalen Reagor, non-touchdown. I can't believe that. How many receivers in the NFL have touchdowns nullified because they run out of bounds on the way to the end zone? It's not like a red zone play. that's so freaking frustrating, man. And I honestly, Jimmy, have I been talking about vibes a lot? Yes, I have. Listeners know it, maybe too much, but the vibes are all good. I was feeling great about the Eagles going into that game. They're pretty good. I'm like, how are they not going to be a team that's starting Josh Norman right now and is banged up and have the link and everything? And it felt like they could have. It felt like they were going to. And then they didn't. Because Jalen Reagor, who, I tweeted this at the time, which is a very podcast thing to say, and no one cares. But I've said this before, it's like, I feel like there's such a Nelson Aguilar element to him. And we got mad about that. But, like, it's so true in the sense that, like, this is a talented player, but it's never a clean performance. And obviously Aguilar was really good in 2017. Outside of that, like, he might do some good things, but there's always going to be this, like boneheaded, super frustrating play that makes you pull your hair out. And it's just like, I don't want to watch that guy. So I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm always waiting for the shoe to drop with Jalen Reagor. And a play like that is like the epitome of that kind of thing. It's just like, it's never like Quez Watkins, who just has like a really good catch, and then another really good catch in the game, and then there's no like massive gap or something like, oh, that was so stupid.
Finally made
and
it.
with Reagor, it feels like it's always that way. And honestly, Jimmy, when I was looking back at the snap counts,
Yeah, I was just going to bring those up.
All
Yeah,
right.
like a dozen more.
Jalen Reagor's playing 72% in week 2. That was the highest, or second highest of any skilled player. Devontae Smith obviously should be in the top at number 1. Quez Watkins is down at 50.
I guess. Hey. Is that so? Good. I see.
Like, can we not do that? Like, can we play, like, Jalen Reagor a little bit less and Quez Watkins a little bit more? Like, that has to happen to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And like, there isn't anything that. So like, Quez, like Reagor's effective on like, or in theory effective on like screen plays and deep down the field and whatnot with his speed and like I guess one of his traits coming out of college was that he was really good after the catch. We've seen that a lot early in his career. He did have obviously the screen pass that beats him to the house against the Falcons week 1. But Quez can do all that stuff too. So like, it's not like you're losing this trait or that trait by taking Reagor off the field and putting Quez Watkins on it. Like I think Quez Watkins can do everything that Reagor can do, and possibly.
That was quite the little adventure we went on.
Why don't we flip over into the defense? Because, so these winners, losers, I don't know, so they usually do after the game. And I felt weird putting about the defense in the winner section because they lost the game. And also,
Something feels odd.
they
Be on
didn't
your
get any,
guard.
and I think they had 2 quarterback hits. They didn't have any takeaways. So, I think the defense has been good overall. I think Jonathan has done a good job overall. But those things I mentioned, like, you're still looking for those. Like, where are the splash plays? I know, like, the model to speak for this defense, which I think is a sound model, is to, like, make the other team drive these long drives and not give up those big plays. They've done a good job. But, like, at some point, I feel like, though, you kind of have to put on the gas somewhere and, like, pick your spots. Or you have to come up with big plays. Maybe I'm being unfair because Anthony Harris dropped what could have been a pick. And then, obviously, that Darius plays. Yeah.
One that recovered, one they didn't.
So yeah, so maybe I'm being a little bit unfair, but like, I mean, they don't have, again, they have no takeaways in 2 weeks, and they don't have
one that recovered, but it didn't count.
right, and they don't have a sack outside of the last 2 drives against the Falcons. But again, the game was kind of in hand, and then the Falcons were kind of like in desperation mode, and the Eagles were just teeing off. Like they haven't had a sack like that, like in a really big spot, like when the game is tied or whatever, kind of like force up on. Like they haven't had that. So I'm just looking for more out of them. What's your impression?
So I'm fine with the defense almost across the board, really. Like, I'm less concerned about the sack numbers and the QB hit numbers because I think these were both, a pair of teams that, like, I mean, legitimately like to get the ball out very quickly. And against Atlanta, like, Matt Ryan was under pressure the entire day. Like, I mean, the Eagles' defensive line, like, clearly missed some that day. So I'm okay with the way that they played, certainly in that game. And then against the Niners, they weren't as dominant. I mean, it's obviously a much better offensive line that San Francisco has than Atlanta does. So that's part of it. But as far as like, only allowing the one play, like we mentioned, of only one play of 20 plus yards, it's a stark contrast to what we've seen over the last few years with Jim Schwartz. So, the lack of turnovers, that's not going to be okay over the long haul. But they almost had one against Matt Ryan, where like it was a grounding call that kind of close to being a bubble. Actually, he kind of like spiked it, and like I thought he brought backwards. Like it should have been a fumble and a turnover. It wasn't called that way. And then they did have the two second plays against the 49ers that were fumbles. One resulted in the Derek Barnett cheap shot. The other was really kind of a tough call in my opinion on Kayvon Wallace for the helmet shot. I think they'll come, but this was a game that getting back to what you were talking about, like with the growing pains and with like, was this an okay loss? Like in my opinion, it wasn't. So like I look at past games where you might consider that game like an quote unquote okay loss. Like I look at like week 2 in 2017 when the Eagles lost to the Chiefs in Kansas City, or like when they lost in Tampa. That was also week 2. In what was that, 2018? Where they just caught a quarterback that was on. Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't want to say like some great quarterback or something like that. But he's on fire that day, and they just ran into a team with like a lot of speed. Just a lot of people. I think those teams came out and won those games as opposed to like the Eagles losing it. I thought the Eagles lost it. Like the 49ers didn't come out with this game. So like, I don't think it's an okay loss. Like I think the Eagles are better than. I think they're actually significantly better than I thought they were going to be like a month ago. So that's good. In terms of like them already sort of exceeding my expectations. I can't speak for anybody else. They're exceeding my expectations, but with the expectations sort of like being reset after week 1, like this was a game that they should have won and just didn't.
But it's a fair way to put it. I would say this game is kind of the reality check after the first week.
That's fair too, yeah.
Thinking like this team could be really good. Maybe they could win double-digit games. Like, I think this kind of game shows that. They could have won it, but I think they still have flaws. And like, it's probably there are reasons here why we do think they're going to be like maybe 7 and 10 or 8 and 9 or around that neighborhood because they have issues. They're not a perfect team. To get back to the defense before we wrap up here, Jimmy. I guess part of my problem. I don't have a problem with the defense as a whole. Again, Gannon has done a good job. But why the playmakers on the defense? If we're going to step up and make a play, Javon Hargrave has been awesome. No argument there. That's player on the team. And then that's a big deal. But like, hey, who else? Like, who's going to step up and like make a big play? Can Fletcher Cox do that? That's going to be really important, especially with Brandon Graham going down. And on the Fletcher Cox note, I looked at all the top 10 tier defensive line contracts in the NFL in terms of annual value that's listed by over the cap. And you look at Fletcher Cox, and you can say it's a small sample size or whatever, maybe 6 teams, but we look at his numbers compared to all those other guys, and Fletcher Cox only has 1 sack and 1 quarterback hit. And all those other players,
no sacks.
Wait, 1. He's 1.
He gets a sack. Fletcher Cox does.
Yeah, his last 6 games.
I'm sorry. I think my bad.
No, yeah, so going back to his last year. So, like, come on, man. Like, if you're going to hire some player in the team, I don't want to hear, like, oh, you're telling me none of these other top 10 tier defensive linemen are ever getting double. I mean, we can say those stats out on that, by the way, on Twitter at the time. Like, the highest percentage of double teams who's seen by defensive linemen or whatever. I remember last year when like, he was on the list. So, like, the idea that, he certainly get double teams. No question about it. Like, he is seen. It should be double teams. Every play.
Of course not. Like, he's not getting the same kind of attention like an Aaron Donald gets, obviously. But, and he does get doubled, and, he does draw attention. Like, there's no question about it that, like, offensive coordinators
I can't believe this.
across the league obviously know who he is, and they know that, like, he can't single block him all day, or eventually he's gonna kill you. Or at least that's kind of what's his MO over the last few years. But it's not like,
Leave the edge
you know,
out.
he's facing these double teams from the start of the game to the end, and like nothing else in between. Like he does have opportunities to make plays, and just leaves him in it.
And take it for what it's worth, the PFF has a great 33rd out of 42 defensive tackles. And from a mindset standpoint, like, where the big plays, like, I know he opens things up for paperwork. I know the doubling, I know all that. But, like, you have to produce too. You get paid elite money. You don't just get paid elite money to help other teammates be better, and then you do nothing. Like, this is, like, don't make this like a minutes of this thing here, but also just water. Like, you have to produce yourself, and he has to. And I'm not trying to crush him. He's a bad player. I don't think that I'm saying we're not seeing elite production from a player who's getting paid to be like the best player on this team. He's the highest cap number in the team. Like, I mean, again, especially with BLG going down, Brandon Graham not being here, being out, the season is over. And they need someone to step up on the defensive line. I think it has to be Fletcher Cox, not only from on the field, but a leadership standpoint. Star player, so she does that. Fletcher Cox joined us, Jimmy, more specifically joined Rachel. On BTN Radio, so we interviewed him. So
thanks, Fletcher.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not trying to say it sucks, you know, saying like it'd be nice to see a little more. So anyway, I want to take a break here, maybe get into the Cowboys a little. But before we do, Right to Spelling Crafter, get something with righttospelling.com. Discount code TN15 BTN15. Get 15% off. They have the best dang meat snacks to me. I think I was telling you. So, you know, I got some Right to Spelling Crafter recently, and the jerky is great and all, but the biltong is even better to me. That stuff is tender. So let's say maybe you're out there and you're kind of skeptical. You're like, I don't like jerky or whatever. Get the biltong.
Air unblinked type 2.
No. Actually, I saw a segment. These are the NFL's most penalized team through 2 games. Like, that's something to watch.
I didn't realize
Any thoughts on
that. Do you know how many penalties there are total?
I think it's like 22 or so.
Actually, I saw something somewhere where like penalties, like overall league wide, like in I think ever maybe over the first 2 weeks, like the most flags thrown by the officials. That might not be totally accurate, but there's been a ton of penalties thrown across the league. So, you know, for the Eagles to also lead the league in penalties is a great thing. So yeah, 22 penalties. That's obviously you know, it's kind of a continuation of last year, and I think they were very heavily penalized a year ago as well. Actually, heavily penalized teams doesn't always correlate to bad records, as most other stats, like turnovers especially, they do. But certainly, you don't want to have all these mistakes, and they had a lot of pre-snap stuff, especially in that Atlanta game. So you don't want to have these penalties that are just complete unforced errors. At least if you're, trying to make plays on the field and penalties just kind of happen. I think those are a little more acceptable. But just the ones where and anything like the Derek Barnett, cheap shot is totally unacceptable. And are we at the point with him where he's just a dumb player?
I think so. He doesn't play smart when you look at it. He has a history of this. It's not just, 1 year and 1 there. It's accumulated now. And another point on these penalties, or something I've been thinking about, Jimmy, is I wonder if it's a young coaching staff thing. Maybe it is because you pointed out, they had some issues with it last year, but that's just something I've been kind of thinking about and want to see moving forward because everyone's so young and in new positions. I don't know if that's related at all. You mentioned Derek Barnett to me. We should probably touch on real quick. Josh White got a contract extension, obviously. Then he played receiver. He didn't play 40% of the snaps.
He got 12 fewer snaps than Ryan Kerrigan, which I understand. Barnett got hurt, and Kerrigan plays the same position as Graham, and their defensive end spot isn't exactly the same as the defensive end spot played by Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett, because sometimes they're operating as 3-4 defensive ends, which doesn't even make sense for Kerrigan either. That's not anything that he's ever played in his career before. BG can certainly do that, in my opinion, because he does have that strength and he's squatty and he can play a defensive tackle sometimes. But it doesn't really make sense for Kerrigan. But there are times where there are obvious passing downs, and Kerrigan was in a clear rushing stance, and Josh Sweat is standing on the sidelines while Ryan Kerrigan is in there. And there's one moment in particular during that game where it was the end of the the end of the third quarter, and it was an obvious pass, and I believe it was 3rd and 7, and Kerrigan's on the field, and the quarter ends, so they don't get the playoff. Open up in the 4th quarter, I figure, okay, maybe Sweat was just tired and he'll be back in the game now, and Kerrigan will be on the bench for this obvious passing down. Maybe over the set of commercials, they'll realize, wait, why do we have Kerrigan in there instead of our best edge rusher? And sure enough, Kerrigan's back in there and Sweat's on the sideline. So that's got to be something they fix. My guess is that they were maybe just a little bit unprepared for all the personnel contingencies that they have in place in case this player goes down or that player goes down or that player goes down, and they just weren't ready for it, which is kind of understandable for a team led by a first-time head coach, first-time defensive coordinator, so on and so forth. So on the growing pains front, I do think that is one example that they can correct going forward.
Well, I don't want to hear from the coaches that are it's all about players, not about scheme. I don't want to hear any scheme-related reason as why Ryan Kerrigan is playing more than Josh Sweat. That doesn't make any sense. Sure. Giving a guy $13 million a year, sending pass rusher, he's playing fewer snaps than Ryan Kerrigan, who's done nothing this season. I don't think Ryan Kerrigan has recorded his stats.
Totally invisible. Yes.
So I don't. And Nick Sirianni, to his credit, did admit they have to get Sweat on the field more. That's something they didn't do well. So again, if that gets fixed in the future, great. But it needs to. If this continues to be a thing, then that's not going to be very good. All right, why don't we get into so a couple more wrap-up things actually. Brandon Brooks, 8-week injury according to Lane Johnson. I like how we get our info about Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson.
I love it. He just doesn't care. He says whatever he wants to say.
Yeah, Lane doesn't care. So Brooks is on IR. Landon Dickerson will be starting in his place. I thought Dickerson had a pretty rough game to start. And in fairness, first NFL game that was his first full NFL week of practice too. He wasn't even taking obviously starters reps. So I'm not saying he's gonna be a disaster moving forward, but he needs to play a lot better.
Alex quote, by the way, before you move on from that, he said during his press conference on Thursday, excuses breed mediocrity on this play.
That's such an Alabama player thing.
Which it is, but it's also such a good quote. He in 3 words, he said, basically, I wasn't good enough, and I'm going to get better. Don't, whereas other players on this team don't often take that approach.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally the exact opposite of what Andre Dillard did when he had to move from left tackle right there. And then Brandon Graham, done for the season, which is crossing. It sucks so much.
Yes.
It's really just he's our favorite player on the team, I've said before.
Yes. From a personality standpoint, yes.
Yeah, just a great guy. I mean, he's my favorite player. I just love Brandon Graham. Because even though he might not be the most dominant pass rusher, he's gonna go play where he sets the tone. He's gonna blow someone up in the backfield. It's a bummer. It's really a bummer that he's gone, and it's a big loss. Like, I know people are excited about Josh Sweat, but that doesn't make up for it in terms of like having this defensive line rotation and this foursome of BLG and Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat. Like, losing Brandon Graham is a big loss, and we'll get into it. We talk about the Cowboys, but I think specifically it can show here. And then the last thing is, Zach Ertz is on the COVID list. He might be able to return before Monday's game if he passes to tests that are negative with 24 hours apart before Monday's game, so we'll see about that one. But did you have anything wrapping up on BLG or Zach Ertz?
Yeah, so Brandon Graham, I think eventually, as kind of time passes, he's going to be not necessarily in like a tier with like a Brian Dawkins or like a Chase Utley, for example. But he's not going to be that far off. Like, I think his career is really going to be appreciated once it's all said and done, especially with the way that he took a lot of crap like early in his career with having been not the player that, I mean, there were barely any, you can barely find anyone that wanted him, as opposed to like an Earl Thomas, for example. But the Earl Thomas comparisons for the first decade of his career, and then when Jason Pierre-Paul was playing really well early in their careers, and he hadn't taken off yet, he got the comparisons to him. And for a guy that like has never had a 10-sack season, like he's really affected so many games over the years, and then obviously the pinnacle of his career. The strip sack of Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, in my opinion, and even more important play in that Super Bowl than the Philly special. Like, it's the play that essentially ended that game. And there was we're gay journalists and whatnot, but I felt very happy for him, specifically, especially in that moment, that he was the guy that Brandon Graham was the guy that made that play. I was very happy for him.
Same, and that is, to me, without question, the biggest play in Eagles history. Especially just the context of the play. You look at Tom Brady, like, coming back.
They were probably going to come back and score.
They hadn't forced up all day. You can tell, like, that's the biggest play in Eagles history. Yeah. It's not even a question. Like, the Philly special is awesome, and it gets the glitz and the glam, but, like, Brandon Graham doing, like...
He just straight up beat a guy one-on-one, and he forced the fumble. Huge.
And he did it in an impossible spot. Like incredibly clutch, like the most clutch thing ever. So yeah, it really sucks. Awesome to see him like handling it well because he's BG and he has great spirits. And I'm sure this could be, I'm sure he's not like thrilled. Obviously, to prefer this. These would be tough days too, and maybe Brandon Graham just doesn't always show that as well because he really shows his happiness. But he seems to be, from what we can tell, having a good mindset about it. So I hope he gets right for next season and comes back as strong as ever. All right, Jimmy, why don't we get into the Cowboys? How about them Cowboys? Let's start on.
I've been thinking about what we discussed earlier. His reasons might not have been pure, but in the end, Dohalim still made Elda Menencia a place where Dannings and Rennans can coexist. I thought everyone would welcome that change, with open arms. I took pride in what we had without putting in the work to truly solidify it. After so much failure, do you think I even have the right to pursue my ideals?
It doesn't matter what I think. You've already found your answer, haven't you?
I know what I want to say, but I can't help but wonder if I'm being selfish.
Everybody makes mistakes in life, Basar. Everybody. It's what you do afterwards that matters. But you already knew that, right?
Yeah. I won't look away from the world any longer. I'll do my best to confront reality, so that we don't lose anyone else, ever again. More to the point, Dohalim needs someone who can push him forward. I think we both get lost in our sorrow too easily when we focus on the past.
If we see that happening, we'll set him straight. Don't worry. We'll look out for both of you. I have to say, though, if you turned out this well modeling yourself after Miguel, he really must have been a great man.
What, you didn't believe me before? I'm pretty sure I've been going on about him since I joined up. If you need more convincing, I've got plenty more stories about him.
No. No.
Maybe another time.
No.
Don't worry. Once
No.
I finish folding these clothes, I'll go to sleep.
No. No. No.
Before we go, do you guys have everything?
No. 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 Drop it. Drop it.
A positive note in terms of the matchups against them.
Okay, well, wait, I want to mention that they're just today from the jump. It's important to mention, just like if you're going through the list of players who are not going to be available for this game. Okay, you're looking at Michael Gallup, who got hurt in week 1. You're looking at Lyle Collins, who's dealing with suspension. Marcus Lawrence, the best defender, got hurt. Randy Gregory, I still think is on the reserve. COVID, we'll see.
No, he's back. He was practicing today, so he's back.
Okay, so he's back. Let me delete that and pretend that I never said that. And then Keanu Neal is dealing with an injury. Safety turned linebacker. Obviously, Eagles fans know Keanu Neal from Torrey Smith catching a pass.
Speaking of the Super Bowl run, yes, but he's back.
Okay. Who got hurt in week 1? You're looking at Lyle Collins, who is dealing with suspension. Marcus Lawrence, the best defender, got hurt. Randy Gregory, I still think is on the reserve. COVID, we'll see.
No, he's back. He was practicing today, so he's back.
Okay, so he's back. Let me delete that and pretend that I never said that. And then Keanu Neal is dealing with an injury. Safety turned linebacker. Obviously, Eagles fans know Keanu Neal from Torrey Smith catching a pass.
Speaking of the Super Bowl run, yes.
And then Dorrance Armstrong, who's like filling in as a starter, or at least one of the starters.
Somebody's watching us.
Yeah, especially with Gregory and Lawrence out. He is banged up now, so he's
out. Yeah, they ruled him out already.
So a lot of defensive injuries, especially. But why don't we get to the matchups, like you said?
Yeah. So the biggest matchup in the Eagles' favor is their offensive line against the Cowboys' defensive line. You mentioned Marcus Lawrence is out. Another starter, defensive tackle. Neville Gallimore is out. Another guy who has started some games, Tristan Hill, is on the pop list. And then you mentioned Armstrong is out, and another defensive tackle.
You did it!
What is it?
Carlos Watkins is out. They are really digging deep into their depth. Nice job, Jimmy. If you look at the healthy players on their roster along the defensive line, those guys, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 9 defensive linemen that they have on their roster right now. I assume they're going to call another guy up off the practice spot, maybe even sign someone. But those 9 guys have a career combined 25 sacks. Oh, and actually, I even included Micah Parsons in there. Like, they're so thin.
We've reached our
along the
destination.
defensive line that, Micah Parsons, their starting linebacker, their best linebacker already is a rookie. Like, he's now playing defensive end. And he actually played pretty well. Because he played defensive end against the Chargers week 2. He actually played pretty well. It was pretty disruptive. But that defensive line is not good. I mean, it wasn't good to start the season. And it's even worse now. But it's also super light. So Parsons weighs 245. One of their other stars right now, Osa Odigizua, is a defensive tackle playing at 280. Watkins is out. I have to actually jumps here, but I guess his replacement will probably be Greg Herman. Probably start the defensive tackle now. He's another guy that was sort of like a 3-4 defenseman for his career. I want to say Baltimore. But yeah, I mean that's another smaller guy, and then Terrell Basham will probably start at the other defenseman spot. He's 266. So anyway, you average out like that those weights, and they're like under 275 on average. The Eagles' offensive line is they average 324 a man, and it's not as if they're just big and they can't play. Like obviously the Eagles' offensive line is a very defensive team, and that has to be a matchup that Eagles dominate if they're going to have any chance of winning this game.
Yeah, on the Parsons note, RJ pointed out that 7 pressures that he had, which is a lot.
Did he have 7 pressures?
Looks like you can.
Yeah, it was
Against the Chargers alone, or
correct. So I believe the Chargers alone was high. Chase Young was really high. And I also saw
Chase Young had 7 pressures.
yes, that's what was written down. What they said was wrong. But I did see some highlights of Parsons specifically doing this too, and it was interesting in terms of the clip that showed was a lot of pass rushers probably just blow by the quarterback because they don't have the balance or whatever. Yeah. Megan Parsons though is able to stay grounded while also rushing and force her to throw away or take it down. It's pretty impressive. So I think it's a little bit concerning. I don't think it's going to be
a tough matchup for Mailata, by the way. Mailata, I think looking at last year, he was power rushers had a chance against them, but the guys that had a lot of speed, some of those guys gave him some trouble, and that would be Parsons in this game. So I do think the Eagles might be smart to kind of give Mailata a little help on the outside on that side. But again, like I said, this is the kind of thing they have to just pump the Cowboys because they're just so light and they have to go down left. And because offensive line is good, they have to win that matchup.
The Cowboys are getting gassed up a little bit in terms of their defense isn't as bad, especially after hitting the Chargers. I don't think it's good by any means to that objective metrics. All Outsiders has that as 22nd defense. You have upgraded Ken with that. That's not 16. I believe defense. So although they do, one thing they have been doing, they have a league high 6 takeaways. Our guy, maybe Devontae Casey, who we like as a potential Eagles target on the season. He was in the history of turning the ball over. Already has 2 takeaways. First 2 games, first football week 1. Interception to Wilson Carter. I think Marcus really bad throw by him in the end zone last week. For the Falcons returned his win, which is frustrating. They have that going for them. They have, Trayvon Diggs is there. I don't think there's anyone that really strikes fear other than Marcus Lawrence, maybe, but he's not playing the right game, so that hurts them. So I agree with you with that. The Eagles' offense isn't producing here. That's kind of the problem. This can't be another week where they're not scoring a touchdown just until they've got enough points against the Cowboys.
The other matchup I have here, Eagles offensively, and we already noted this earlier in the podcast, where they're just ignoring the middle of the field. And I alluded to this matchup coming up. I think Dallas Goedert has to have the game in this game work in the middle of the field. Zach Ertz, as you mentioned, has COVID to be determined if he'll be back in time for this game. But whether he is or not, I think this is the Dallas Goedert kind of game that he has to be I'm not going to say that have a chance to win this game around Dallas Goedert, obviously, but he's had big games against the Cowboys before, 2018, 44 yards, touchdown, plus he had that long 75-yarder wiped off the board. One of the worst saved my life. It's 2019. In the 2 games that he played against the Cowboys, he had 16 targets, 13 catches, and 160 yards total with a couple of touchdowns. He had that real clutch game in the late season to basically for the division. 2019, where he had 9 catches and 9 touchdowns. So he's done damage against the Cowboys before, and you look at these Cowboys linebackers, Jim Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. That was a really nice duo a few years ago. They're not a nice duo anymore. Keanu Neal's actually playing ahead of Leighton Vander Esch. I think that's what they're going to call it so far. But if he can go, or if he may not go, and anything he does, like he's not going to be 100%. So, if they do get matchups on Goddard against these linebackers, it has to be, a focus of the Eagles' offense, in my opinion, to try to get him the ball from Joe.
I mean, a bit.
Good.
Moving around to the other side of the
On
ball.
me? Well,
Is
I'll
that
do my
the
best.
concern for me, looking at concerns, is Tony Pollard coming on a little bit
Yeah.
here. Tony Pollard has long been like this kind of underutilized weapon for the Cowboys in terms of was wasting carries on Zeke, and they kind of went heavier to him against the Chargers, and Zeke still got more touches or more carries overall. But Tony Pollard coming on is a little bit concerning. He has a lot of juice, I think, especially compared to Zeke. Although traditionally the Eagles haven't always done great against Zeke. It's not like they can easily just shut him down.
That was quite the
Although
little
I do think
adventure
it's
we went
favorable
on.
if you're giving him the ball as opposed to the other options that they have, like airing it out.
Yeah.
So one of their wide receivers, I think that's you'll kind of take that. And one of the things I kind of teased earlier, like missing Brandon Graham. I mean, that's something I'm interested to see how the run game, if the Eagles are able to kind of keep that Cowboys run game in check. It's a little interesting because in week 1, there was a lot of talk to me about how the Cowboys weren't going to the run enough. They passed way too much. And then last week against the Chargers, they kind of flipped the script and they were running a lot more. And they won in that game. So what are you making? What's like your defensive matchup for the Eagles?
Yeah, you mentioned BJ and how difficult he's going to be to replace just in terms of his leadership and his energy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, last year, I found this tweet from John Owen, who I believe covers the Cowboys
Finally.
for PFF.
If only we could
I remember Terrence Steele having like a terrible game against them, the one that was in
Faster.
Philadelphia with as the starter. But in that game, he allowed 7 pressures and 3 sacks. Like he just got torn apart. So Terrence Steele is the right tackle in place of Lyle Collins,
the right tackle.
and he'll be starting their right tackle in this game. And it'll be interesting to see how they replace Brandon Graham. I think it'll be a combination of Milton Williams, who will just sort of slide into Brandon Graham's role as is, and then hopefully the Eagles are, cognizant of their failings in getting, Derek Barnett, Sweat, or Josh Sweat in the game more in favor of Ryan Kerrigan when they're in obvious passing situations. I think that's a big matchup that